The dark allure of cursed objects. Welcome back to the channel, dear friends and fellow lovers of the supernatural. If you've ever felt a chill run down your spine at the thought of objects infused with dark energy, objects that seem to possess a will of their own, bringing misfortune, madness, or even death, you're in for a treat today. In this video, we're diving deep into the world of cursed artifacts, relics, and possessions that have left devastation in their wake. These are not just eerie collectibles, they are items steeped in tragedy, haunted by spirits, or bound to ancient curses that refuse to fade with time. Cursed objects have long captured the imagination of storytellers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. From legendary weapons said to doom their wielders to innocent-looking trinkets that unleash chaos upon those who dare to own them, these items blur the line between myth and reality. Some have been passed through generations, each new owner meeting a fate more tragic than the last, while others have vanished without explanation, leaving behind only whispers of their horrors. Throughout history, people have attributed supernatural power to certain objects, believing them to be conduits of divine wrath, demonic influence, or the lingering rage of the dead. Whether it's an antique mirror that reflects more than just your image or a doll that seems to move when no one is watching, these cursed possessions serve as chilling reminders that some things were never meant to be owned or touched. So, grab a warm drink, settle into your favorite spot, and prepare yourself for a journey through the most terrifying cursed objects you won't believe actually exist. The psychology behind fear of cursed objects. The fear of cursed objects taps into something deeply rooted in the human psyche, an instinctual wariness of the unknown, and an intrinsic belief in the power of symbolic meaning. Unlike hauntings tied to specific locations, cursed objects carry their malevolence wherever they go, making them all the more unsettling. This portability introduces a new layer of terror. Nowhere is truly safe if a single item can bring ruin simply by being possessed. The idea that an ordinary object could harbor an unspeakable evil challenges our sense of control over our surroundings, invoking primal fears of contamination, possession, and inevitable doom. Psychologists studying superstition and the paranormal suggest that humans naturally assign meaning to inanimate objects, particularly those tied to historical events or personal significance. This phenomenon, known as object permanence, allows us to form emotional attachments to items, but it also means we can project negative associations onto them. When an object becomes infamous for its role in tragedy, whether real or imagined, it accumulates a psychological weight that makes it difficult to separate from its dark past. The mere knowledge that an object has caused suffering in the past can trigger anxiety in those who encounter it, reinforcing the belief that it carries a lingering curse. Additionally, the fear surrounding cursed objects is often fueled by cognitive biases such as confirmation bias and the illusion of control. Confirmation bias leads individuals to interpret ambiguous experiences as evidence supporting their existing beliefs, in this case, the belief that an object is cursed. Those who inherit or acquire a notorious artifact may begin noticing small misfortunes, which they attribute to the object rather than coincidence. Meanwhile, the illusion of control, the mistaken belief that one can prevent negative outcomes through ritual or avoidance, only heightens the tension. A person might convince themselves that as long as they follow certain precautions, they can avoid disaster, but the constant need to remain vigilant amplifies stress and paranoia. Ultimately, the fear of cursed objects is a blend of cultural conditioning, psychological projection, and the human tendency to seek patterns in chaos. Whether the true danger lies in the object itself or in the mind of the beholder, the terror remains very real. Historical origins of cursed objects. The concept of cursed objects is not a modern invention. It stretches back thousands of years, woven into the fabric of ancient civilizations and folklore. Many of these cursed artifacts originate from rituals, wars, or sacred ceremonies gone awry, embedding them with a legacy of dread that persists through the ages. In many cases, these objects were believed to hold immense power, either bestowed by deities or tainted by forbidden acts, making them both revered and feared. One of the earliest recorded instances of a cursed object comes from ancient Egypt, where tomb raiders often faced what was described as the curse of the pharaohs. Perhaps the most famous example is the malediction allegedly placed upon those who disturbed the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. While modern science attributes the deaths of several individuals connected to the excavation to natural causes, the legend took root in popular culture, reinforcing the belief that certain artifacts should never be removed from their resting places. Egyptian amulets, statues, and even seemingly innocuous items like papyrus scrolls were inscribed with spells and prayers, some of which warned of dire consequences should they be misused or taken unlawfully. In medieval Europe, the notion of cursed objects became intertwined with religious beliefs and superstitions. Holy relics were believed to possess divine power, but equally feared were objects associated with heresy, witchcraft, or sacrilege. Swords used in brutal battles, daggers involved in assassinations, and even jewelry worn by condemned criminals were often thought to carry residual malevolence. One infamous example is the dagger allegedly used to murder King Duncan of Scotland, a figure immortalized in Shakespeare's Macbeth. According to legend, the blade was imbued with the king's dying curse, bringing ruin to anyone who dared to wield it. Beyond individual items, entire collections of cursed artifacts emerged throughout history. During the Victorian era, fascination with the occult led to the accumulation of so-called cursed antiques, often acquired from distant lands and displayed in private cabinets of curiosity. These collections frequently included masks from indigenous cultures, ceremonial weapons, and even preserved body parts, all believed to retain the spiritual essence of their origins. Some wealthy collectors paid dearly for their obsessions, experiencing inexplicable tragedies after acquiring these objects. The enduring myths surrounding cursed objects continued to evolve, influencing literature, film, and contemporary paranormal investigations. Whether rooted in historical truth or embellished by centuries of storytelling, these artifacts remind us that the past is never truly buried, and that some objects may indeed carry the weight of countless misfortunes. Case study: the cursed mirror of Nostradamus. Among the many cursed objects that have gained notoriety throughout history, few are as enigmatic, or as dangerous, as the cursed mirror of Nostradamus. This ornate, silver-backed glass, housed within an intricate wooden frame adorned with astrological symbols, is rumored to have belonged to the famed 16th-century French seer Michel de Nostradame, better known as Nostradamus. Legends claim that the mirror served as a tool for his prophetic visions, allowing him to peer beyond the veil of time. However, those who have come into contact with the artifact since his death report devastating fates, linking the mirror to madness, death, and unexplainable occurrences. Historical accounts suggest that Nostradamus himself feared the power of the mirror, warning his family never to look into it directly. He reportedly kept it covered at all times, using only the faintest reflections cast from the edges to glimpse his apocalyptic visions. After his passing, the mirror disappeared, slipping into the hands of various collectors and mystics over the centuries. Each new owner, it seems, met a tragic end point. One of the most well-documented cases involves a 19th-century British antiquarian named Elias Wren, who claimed to have discovered the mirror hidden in a forgotten chamber beneath the ruins of an old monastery in Provence. Upon returning to England, Wren set up a private museum featuring rare occult artifacts, with the mirror as the centerpiece. Visitors to his collection marveled at its craftsmanship, though many reported feeling uneasy in its presence. Some swore they saw fleeting images reflected in the glass that did not match reality, figures standing behind them, shadowy movements on the periphery, and glimpses of unfamiliar rooms that did not exist in Wren's home. Wren himself began exhibiting strange behavior shortly after acquiring the mirror. He would sit before it for hours, speaking in hushed tones, claiming that the glass revealed glimpses of future catastrophes. His journals, later recovered by scholars, contained frantic scrawls describing visions of war, plagues, and the collapse of civilization. Eventually, he locked himself away, refusing visitors and feeding rumors that he had succumbed to madness. His sudden disappearance in 1874 sparked widespread speculation, with some claiming he had been consumed by the mirror's visions, while others suggested foul play. His body was never found. After Wren's disappearance, the mirror resurfaced in the early 20th century, this time in the possession of a Parisian psychic named Madame Lefebvre, who used it during séances to connect with the dead. She insisted that the mirror allowed her to communicate with Nostradamus himself, receiving cryptic warnings about impending disasters. However, her followers soon began reporting disturbing experiences, nightmares so vivid they blurred the lines between sleep and waking life, hallucinations of spectral figures staring from the glass, and a growing sense of dread whenever they entered the room housing the mirror. Lefebvre herself eventually suffered a breakdown, claiming that the mirror was no longer showing glimpses of the future but instead revealing memories from lives she had never lived. She became convinced that the artifact was absorbing her soul piece by piece, leaving her trapped in an endless cycle of foreign recollections. Her final recorded message was a desperate plea. "It watches when I sleep. It knows me better than I know myself." Soon after, she vanished, and the mirror was lost once more. Despite numerous attempts to track its whereabouts, the cursed mirror of Nostradamus remains missing. Some believe it still exists, hidden in a private collection or buried beneath the ruins of an abandoned estate, waiting for the next unwitting soul to gaze into its depths. Others argue that the entire legend is nothing more than a cautionary tale, designed to warn against meddling with forces beyond human comprehension. Regardless of the truth, the mirror stands as one of history's most infamous cursed objects, a relic that blurs the boundaries between prophecy, madness, and the unknown. Case study: the Annabelle doll, a haunting legacy, perhaps one of the most infamous cursed objects in modern paranormal history. The Annabelle doll has become synonymous with terror, inspiring books, documentaries, and even blockbuster horror films. But beyond the dramatization lies a chilling true story that continues to send shivers down the spines of those who hear it. Discovered in a New England antique shop in the late 1960s, the Ragged Ann-style doll was purchased by a nursing student named Donna and given to her as a birthday gift by her mother. What seemed like an innocent, if somewhat outdated, toy quickly proved to be anything but harmless. From the moment Donna brought the doll into her apartment, strange occurrences began to unfold. At first, the movements were subtle. Annabelle would be found in different positions than when she was last seen, sitting upright when she had previously been lying down. Then came the more sinister disturbances. Roommates reported hearing scratching sounds coming from the room where the doll was kept, despite no visible source of movement. On multiple occasions, Donna and her boyfriend, Louis, claimed to see the doll's eyes following them, shifting unnaturally when no one was looking. What made the situation even more alarming was the discovery of cryptic messages scrawled in chalk across the apartment floor. Written in crude handwriting were phrases like, "Help us," and "Don't hurt Annabelle," despite no one in the household admitting to writing them. Even more perplexing was the fact that neither Donna nor Louis owned chalk, and there were no signs of forced entry or tampering. As the disturbances escalated, the couple grew increasingly terrified, feeling as though they were being watched at all times. Desperate for answers, they reached out to renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, whose expertise in demonology and the occult had already earned them national attention. Upon inspecting the doll and the apartment, the Warrens concluded that it was not the doll itself that was possessed, but rather that it had become a conduit for a spirit. They identified the entity as the soul of a deceased young girl named Annabelle Higgins, who had supposedly lived in the building decades earlier and died under mysterious circumstances. According to the Warrens, the spirit was not malevolent but rather lonely and seeking companionship, which is why it attached itself to the doll. Despite this relatively benign explanation, the Warrens advised Donna and Louis to take extreme precautions. They performed a blessing on the apartment, and warned that the doll must never be taken out of its designated space or subjected to any provocation. Unfortunately, their advice went largely unheeded in the months that followed. Curious friends visited the apartment, eager to test the doll's eerie reputation by moving it around or whispering to it, only to experience the same unsettling sensations reported by Donna and Louis. Eventually, fearing for their safety, the couple turned the doll over to the Warrens, who stored it in their occult museum in Monroe, Connecticut. However, even behind locked glass, Annabelle was far from dormant. Employees and paranormal researchers who worked closely with the museum reported hearing whispering near the doll's display case, and some claimed to feel an oppressive presence when alone in the room. Lorraine Warren herself stated that the doll had to be kept in a consecrated cabinet surrounded by protective symbols, lest whatever force was drawn to it gain too much strength. Though skeptics argue that the Annabelle case is an elaborate hoax or a product of mass hysteria, the sheer number of first-hand accounts, from Donna and Lewis to the Warrens and museum staff, lends credence to the idea that the doll is indeed linked to something unnatural. Whether it is truly haunted by the spirit of a lost child or serves as a vessel for something far darker, the Annabelle doll remains one of the most notorious cursed objects in existence, a testament to the thin veil between the living and the dead. Case study: the cursed painting, La Llorona. Art has long been regarded as a powerful medium, not only for creative expression but also for capturing the essence of emotions, legends, and even the supernatural. Among the many eerie works of art that have gained a reputation for being cursed, one stands out for its haunting presence and tragic connections: the painting titled La Llorona. Inspired by the Mexican folk legend of the woman in white who drowned her children in a fit of despair and now wanders eternally searching for them, this particular depiction has been linked to a series of unfortunate events for those who have owned it. The origins of the painting are shrouded in mystery, with conflicting reports attributing it to different artists across Latin America. Some believe it was created in the early 20th century by an anonymous painter who allegedly based his work on a vision he experienced in a dream, one in which a weeping woman appeared, pleading for help finding her lost children. According to local lore, the artist became obsessed with the image, painting feverishly until he collapsed and died, leaving behind only one completed canvas, La Llorona. Over the decades, the painting changed hands multiple times, always accompanied by tales of misfortune. One of its most infamous owners was a wealthy businessman from Mexico City who reportedly acquired it at an auction in the 1950s. Shortly after bringing the painting home, his wife began experiencing night terrors in which she claimed to hear the sound of a woman sobbing outside their bedroom window. When she finally confronted the crying figure, she claimed to have seen a translucent woman in a white dress standing in the hallway, her face obscured by flowing black hair. The next morning, the painting had been moved from its original location, resting ominously at the foot of their bed. The businessman dismissed the incident as a trick of the mind, but the occurrences escalated. Strange damp spots began appearing on the walls of their home, despite no plumbing issues or moisture in the air. Their daughter, a young girl at the time, developed a habit of wandering outside barefoot in the middle of the night, mumbling incoherently about the lady in white. Desperate for answers, the couple sought the help of a priest, who claimed that the painting exuded a negative energy that needed to be blessed. Following a cleansing ritual, the disturbances ceased, for a short time. Then came the accident. Just weeks after the priest's visit, the businessman's daughter wandered too close to a busy street and was struck by a passing vehicle. Though she survived, she remained in a coma for several days, during which her parents reported seeing misty apparitions hovering near her bedside. Distraught and terrified, the businessman decided to get rid of the painting, donating it to a local museum under the condition that its history remain undisclosed. However, the curse did not end there. Years later, the museum was plagued by strange occurrences. Staff members reported hearing the sound of water dripping in dry rooms and catching fleeting glimpses of a figure in white moving through the halls. Visitors complained of sudden chills and an overwhelming sense of sorrow when passing by La Llorona. Fearing public backlash, the museum eventually removed the painting from display and attempted to sell it to a private collector. Its current whereabouts remain unknown, but whispers persist that it still exists, waiting for another unsuspecting soul to awaken whatever sorrowful spirit lingers within its brushstrokes. The cursed statue of the screaming nun. Deep within the crumbling corridors of a long-abandoned Spanish convent lies a statue that has become the subject of whispered horror stories and supernatural speculation. Known as the cursed statue of the screaming nun, this grotesque effigy depicts a hooded female figure caught in the throes of agony, mouth agape in a silent scream. Those statues of tormented souls are not uncommon in religious settings, often serving as cautionary depictions of damnation. This particular sculpture has garnered worldwide attention due to the bizarre and horrifying events that have followed those who have interacted with it. According to legend, the statue was carved in the 17th century by a monk who had grown disillusioned with the church. He had fallen in love with a nun within the convent, and when their forbidden relationship was discovered, the Brotherhood sentenced them both to eternal exile within the convent's walls. The monk, driven mad by grief and guilt, spent his remaining days sculpting a tribute to his lost love, pouring his anguish into every detail of the statue's agonized expression. Before completing the final stroke, he was found dead in his workshop, his body contorted in a position eerily similar to the figure he had been carving. The nun, meanwhile, reportedly vanished without a trace, her absence adding to the mystery surrounding the sculpture. For centuries, the statue remained in the convent, largely ignored except by those who noticed the unsettling way its expression seemed to change depending on the light. Some claimed that its eyes followed them, while others swore its mouth appeared slightly wider when viewed at different angles. Then, in the mid-1900s, the convent was abandoned due to a series of unexplained disappearances and disturbing incidents involving the nuns who resided there. Rumors spread that the statue had begun to weep, its stone cheeks streaked with what appeared to be tears, though no logical explanation could be found. When the convent was finally sold to a private collector in the 1980s, the statue was among the artifacts acquired. The collector, a wealthy art enthusiast, proudly displayed it in his mansion, boasting about its supposed supernatural properties at dinner parties. Not long after its arrival, however, strange occurrences began to plague the household. Staff members reported hearing the sound of a woman wailing in the dead of night, though no one could locate the source. Doors would slam shut without warning, and lights flickered uncontrollably when anyone stood too close to the statue. The collector's wife, initially skeptical, began experiencing severe nightmares in which a cloaked figure loomed over her bed, whispering unintelligible words. Desperate for relief, she sought the help of a priest, who conducted an exorcism on the statue, declaring it to be unnatural. Despite the ritual, the disturbances continued, culminating in the collector's sudden and inexplicable death. He was found in his study, seated in his chair, eyes wide with terror, his fingers clawing at his throat as if he had been strangled by invisible hands. Following his death, the statue was donated to a museum specializing in religious artifacts. Almost immediately, employees began resigning, citing feelings of unease and paranoia. Security cameras captured footage of the statue's head turning ever so slightly when no one was nearby, and temperature fluctuations were recorded in the room where it was displayed, sometimes dropping below freezing without explanation. Eventually, the museum opted to remove the statue from public view, storing it in a sealed crate labeled only with the word "Danger." To this day, the cursed statue of the screaming nun remains locked away, a grim reminder of the tragedy that birthed it. Whether it is truly haunted by the tortured soul of a lost lover or merely a symbol of human fear projected onto an eerie sculpture, one thing is certain: those who have crossed its path have rarely escaped unscathed. The cursed sword of Damocles, a blade of fate among the many cursed objects tied to legends of power and downfall. Few are as steeped in historical intrigue as the cursed sword of Damocles. Named after the ancient Greek anecdote famously recounted by Cicero, the sword symbolizes the perilous nature of unchecked authority and the looming threat that accompanies great fortune. However, beyond the metaphorical interpretation, an actual physical weapon, believed to be the legendary blade, has surfaced in obscure historical records, carrying with it a trail of misfortunes and deaths that have baffled scholars and paranormal investigators alike. The legend of Damocles originates from Syracuse in the 4th century BCE, when a courtier named Damocles expressed envy for the wealth and power of King Dionysius II. To illustrate the dangers inherent in such a life, Dionysius invited Damocles to experience his rule for a day. As Damocles reveled in luxury, he failed to notice a sharp sword suspended above him by a single horsehair, a stark reminder that prosperity is always shadowed by imminent peril. While the story was meant to serve as a moral lesson, some accounts claim that an actual sword was used to make the point, and that this very weapon was later passed down through generations, carrying with it the very curse implied by the tale. Historians attempting to trace the origins of the physical blade suggest it may have belonged to a lesser-known noble during the Roman Empire, hidden away in private collections and passed down through secret societies that believed it held mystical influence over fate. Records indicate that the sword changed hands multiple times, always leaving destruction in its wake. One of the most documented cases involves a 13th-century Italian prince named Alessandro Visconti, who acquired the blade from a traveling merchant who spoke of its legendary prestige. Within a year of owning the sword, Alessandro was betrayed by his closest advisors, imprisoned, and ultimately executed by his own brother in a ruthless power struggle. Centuries later, the sword resurfaced in the possession of a French aristocrat during the reign of Louis XIV. Marquis Henri de Montreuil was known for his obsession with ancient relics and boasted openly about his collection, including the fabled sword of Damocles. Soon after displaying it in his grand estate, he fell gravely ill, experiencing violent hallucinations in which he claimed to see the blade dangling above his bed, cutting loose from its tether. His physicians could find no medical cause for his decline, and within weeks, de Montreuil was found dead in his chambers, clutching the sword with a terrified expression frozen on his face. The last verified sighting of the cursed blade was in the early 20th century, when it was reportedly housed in a private museum in Germany. The curator, Dr. Wilhelm Reinhardt, documented his experiences with the sword, noting that his colleagues refused to handle it, claiming it emitted an unnatural chill even in the warmest rooms. Reinhardt himself became increasingly paranoid, convinced that unseen forces were watching him whenever he gazed at the blade. His final diary entry read, "I see it now, hanging above me, though there is no rope. It waits for me." Days later, he was found dead in his office, the sword resting beside him, untouched by any apparent hand. Despite extensive efforts to locate the sword in modern times, its whereabouts remain unknown. Some believe it was destroyed in a fire that consumed Reinhardt's museum, while others speculate that it still exists, hidden away in a private collection or buried beneath the remnants of an abandoned estate. Whatever the truth, the cursed sword of Damocles endures as a symbol of fate's cruel irony, a weapon that, whether real or mythical, has left a trail of ruined lives in its wake. The cursed ring of the Borgias, poison, power, and peril. Few names evoke treachery and ambition quite like the Borgias, a powerful Italian family of the Renaissance era whose name became synonymous with political manipulation, poisonings, and scandal. Among the many dark legends surrounding them, one of the most chilling is the story of the cursed Borgia ring, a seemingly innocuous piece of jewelry said to have played a direct role in the family's ruthless ascent to power. More than just a symbol of wealth, the ring was rumored to be a deadly instrument, embedded with a hidden compartment designed to deliver poison to unsuspecting victims. The origins of the ring are traced back to Cesare Borgia, the infamous son of Pope Alexander VI, who was known for his cunning strategies and ruthless elimination of rivals. According to historical accounts, Cesare carried a signet ring that bore the family crest and was built with a concealed mechanism capable of releasing a slow-acting toxin when pressed against the victim's skin. The poison, derived from belladonna and other potent herbs, would take days to manifest symptoms, making it appear as though the victim had died from natural causes. This method allowed Cesare to eliminate threats without immediate suspicion, further bolstering his reputation as a master of deception and cruelty. However, the true curse associated with the ring goes beyond its intended use as a weapon. Legends claim that Cesare himself was eventually poisoned by his own device, either through betrayal or supernatural retribution for his sins. Other accounts suggest that the ring was cursed by a vengeful relative of one of his victims, invoking a dark spell that ensured that anyone who possessed it would meet a tragic fate. Over the centuries, the ring has resurfaced in various historical collections, always accompanied by ominous reports. One of the most well-documented cases involves a 19th-century French aristocrat, Count Arnaud de Vigny, who acquired the ring at an auction in Rome. The cursed chess set of the Black Death amid the horrors of the 14th century, when the bubonic plague ravaged Europe and left millions dead in its wake, a chilling artifact emerged, one that would become infamous for its association with death, despair, and the relentless march of fate. Known as the cursed chess set of the Black Death, this macabre collection of ivory game pieces has been tied to centuries of misfortune, its origins steeped in legend and its presence seemingly accelerating the downfall of those who dare to play with it. The chess set is believed to have been commissioned by a wealthy French nobleman during the height of the plague in 1348. Desperate to distract himself from the devastation unfolding around him, he enlisted the finest artisans of the time to craft a set unlike any other. Rather than depicting traditional figurines, The pieces were carved to resemble skeletal warriors, each knight, bishop, and king rendered in exquisite detail, their hollow eyes and grinning skulls a grim reflection of the times. Some accounts claim that the nobleman, overwhelmed by grief after losing his entire family to the disease, ordered the set to be crafted as a final act of defiance against death itself. Others suggest that he was already infected and sought to create a masterpiece that would outlive him, unaware that his creation would carry forth a legacy of doom. Within months of its completion, the nobleman mysteriously vanished. Some say he fled, hoping to escape the plague, while others believe he took his own life, unable to cope with the weight of his losses. What is known is that the chess set remained in his manor, untouched for years, until it was discovered by a group of mercenaries who had taken refuge in the abandoned estate. Intrigued by the eerie beauty of the pieces, they played a game, unaware of the omen that awaited them. One by one, the soldiers began to fall ill. Their symptoms mirrored those of the plague: fever, swollen lymph nodes, internal bleeding, but none had been exposed to the disease in recent days. Desperate for answers, they abandoned the manor, scattering in different directions. However, the sickness followed them, spreading rapidly through the villages they passed. By the time the last of them succumbed to the illness, entire communities had been wiped out. Local priests declared the chess set to be cursed, blaming it for the rapid spread of death and ordering it to be burned. Yet, when flames were lit, the pieces remained unscathed, their ivory surfaces glowing faintly in the firelight. Over the centuries, the cursed set reappeared sporadically, always bringing calamity in its wake. In the 17th century, it was reportedly in the possession of an English scholar obsessed with medieval history. He meticulously studied the pieces, documenting their carvings and inscriptions, convinced they held the key to an ancient secret. His research abruptly ended when he was found dead in his study, his body contorted in agony, his hands gripping the White Queen as though trying to shield himself from an unseen force. In the 19th century, the set briefly surfaced in the collection of a German noblewoman who displayed it in her parlor as a conversation piece. Guests who played games with the set reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. Some claimed to hear whispers during their matches, voices murmuring in an unknown language as if guiding the outcome of the game. One guest collapsed mid-game, suffering a fatal heart attack, and the noblewoman, terrified, vowed never to allow the set